Week number 11 of the 2025 fantasy football season kicks off tonight on Thursday Night Football with the Jets traveling to Foxborough to face the Patriots. In today's video, I'm going to help you guys set your lineup at the tight end position. We're going to be going in depth through every single matchup from that Thursday night game all the way up until Monday Night Football, and I'll be telling you guys whether I believe you should start or sit the tight ends in all matchups, as well as where I believe they'll finish by the end of the week. Before we can get into things, though, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with the New York Jumbo Jets at the New England Patriots on Thursday Night Football. Now, Hunter Henry has been all over the place this season, and he has mostly been in a bad place. The Jets are the 13th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, so this could be a rekindling of that magic from earlier on in the season, but I definitely would not bet on that. He hasn't scored 10 points now in PPR in 6 straight games, just a break glass in case of an emergency start in the tight end 16 to 18 range, just due to the fact that the matchup is solid and because of how good Drake May is. It definitely wouldn't surprise me if Hunter Henry did find the end zone, but far from a guy that you definitely would be excited to put in your lineup. For the Jets, Mason Taylor with Justin Fields under center, you might as well just be playing Russian roulette by starting a guy like Mason Taylor. I could see this guy finishing on top of the world as a top 5 tight end, being the reason why you potentially win your fantasy matchup, and I could just as easily see him putting up a goose egg and being the reason why your team ends up sleeping with the fishes and you losing your matchup. Last week, he had just 1 catch on 2 targets for 4 yards. The Patriots are the 9th best matchup for tight ends, but with how this offense is moving, even without Garrett Wilson, I am not comfortable playing him. Now we move to Madrid, Sunday, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the Miami Dolphins. Now, Zach Ertz is normally a very easy tight end to break down. His production is significantly better with Jaden Daniels, so if Jaden Daniels is playing, then you start him. If Mariota is in, then you sit him. But this week, we have to stray away from this rule, as the Dolphins are the 3rd best matchup for tight ends. So while I do still strongly believe that there is a bad connection here between him and Mariota, the connection is not very strong like it is with Jaden Stormy Daniels, but this is the kind of matchup here where I'm willing to let him go into my lineup, especially since there is Terry McLaurin, and because of the fact that I believe they'll be down in this game, throwing the ball a ton late. Again, does it feel great? No. No, it doesn't. Last week up against the Lions, 4 receptions on 5 targets for 54 yards. If you are in a desperation scenario, break glass in case of emergency, kind of like Hunter Henry, he is a fringe tight end 2 type of start. Now, Greg Dulcich has continued to receive more snaps every single week since his Dolphins debut in week number 8, going from 28% of the snaps in week 8 to 58% last week up against the Bills. Back-to-back games with 4+ targets. I would not be surprised if he found some success here in the 8th best matchup for tight ends, but at the end of the day, I believe that the Finns will look to apply the pressure by running the ball a ton with Achane, and since I really think that they will be up late in the game, not needing to throw, that does make Greg Dulcich a lot less likely to score. So while he may feel enticing this week, I would prefer to sit him. Now we move to the 1 p.m. slate of games with the Carolina Panthers at the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Kyle Pitts has simmered down over the last 2 weeks, still seeing 5+ targets in back-to-back games, but he did fail to score more than 10 points in both showings. 2 receptions on 5 targets for 38 yards in Germany up against the Indianapolis Colts. This week, he is in the 7th best matchup for tight ends on a per-game basis. So while Kyle Pitts doesn't feel safe at all on a week-in, week-out standpoint, the upside is here in a matchup like this for him to be a low-end tight end number 1. Now, the Panthers continue to utilize a 3-headed tight end approach of Jatavion Sanders, Tommy Make That Ass Tremble, and Mitchell Evans. While Jatavion Sanders is the highest of the 3 on the target hierarchy of this Panthers offense, with Bryce Young playing like the blind man from the intro of the Colt 45 song, leave Colonel Sanders on your waivers. Now we move to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Buffalo Bills, which may just be the game of the week. Now, Chris Godwin did return to practice today on Thursday, but based on all the reports that we have seen over the last few weeks, I would be shocked if he does end up suiting up in this matchup. Without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Cade Otton will be a tight end that you want in your lineup. He won't always be a guy that I bang the drum for as a must-start top 12 option, but he will always have that upside. Last week, after Baker was struggling in the prior 2 games before the bye, Cade Otton had 9 receptions on 12 targets for 82 yards against the Patriots as the tight end number 6. This matchup on paper may be frightening as the Bills allowed the least amount of points on a per-game basis to tight ends, though that is mostly due to the level of tight ends that they have played against and less to do with the fact that the Bills are a suffocating defense up against the tight end position. Kelce was the tight end 8 up against them in week number 9, so I feel good ranking him as a mid-range tight end 1 this week. Dalton Kincaid was not at practice yesterday with the hamstring injury and was labeled as week to week on Monday, which basically guarantees that he will be out at least this game. That will elevate Dawson Knox one time with You're With Me and Jackson Hawes to be utilized in this offense. With Josh Allen's clear love for tight ends, he just like me for real, one of these guys could end up finding the end zone. We did see Hawes do that last week with 1 reception on 2 targets for 26 yards and a touchdown, but Knox outsnapped him and out-targeted him. This is just a very large guessing game without Dalton Kincaid. Even when Kincaid is playing, we're still getting 3 tight ends used, but Kincaid is the main piece. Here, it could easily be Dawson Knox, it could easily be Jackson Hawes, or neither of them could end up being start-worthy. So to me, this is a very big guessing game, and it's just the 22nd best matchup for tight ends, so I would prefer to sit them both. Now we move to the Houston Texans at the Tennessee Titans, the battle of the Oilers. Now, Dalton Schultz is dealing with a shoulder injury and did not practice on Wednesday. This is not a new injury as he has been playing through it. With this kind of scenario, I think we should just assume he will play, but it is something to monitor as it may get worse as the week goes on, right? He may have banged it up even more last week up against the Jaguars. In that game, he had 7 receptions on 11 targets for 53 yards and a touchdown. Back-to-back top 7 showings for Dalton Schultz, likely without CJ Stroud again and with Davis Money Mills under center. I think you can still count on Schultz as things went quite well for him last week in the 24th best matchup for tight ends. Schultz is a mid-range tight end 1 for me on the week. Chig played through his foot injury in week number 9, and then the team was on bye last week, so him being limited on Wednesday isn't all that crazy to me, in my opinion, as it is very likely that the team is just being cautious with him. I love Chig, but ultimately with just 1 top 12 game out of 12 or out of 9 starts this season, it'd be crazy if he played 12 games. It's only week fucking 11, but even with him flashing on the field, right? Even with him looking solid, this is a team that is a complete and utter joke, right? The Tennessee Titans offense is trash. So in the 4th worst matchup for tight ends, you aren't just magically going to roll the dice on Chig. Now we move to the Chicago Bears at the cold-like Minnesota Vikings. Before we break down this game in depth at the rest of the tight ends in today's video, I would like to give you guys a quick word from our friends and our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play $5 in the pick'em, you receive an additional $100 in bonus funds or in bonus entries. How does the pick'em work? It's incredibly simple. You make at least 2 picks on the higher or the lower for the players. If those picks hit, you get paid. Now, if you do multiple other picks, then the payout will be higher, but all of the picks need to hit. Make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious, or by clicking on the link in the video description. Now, Colston Loveland is a guy that's pretty difficult for me to bang the drum for here with Cole Kmet healthy. After he hit the Bengals with a question mark kick back in week number 9 with 6 receptions on 7 targets for 118 yards and 2 touchdowns, one of those being the game-winning touchdown, he followed that up last week with 4 receptions on 4 targets for 55 yards as the tight end 13, playing 62% of the snaps compared to Kmet's 66%. The usage of Kmet is really just holding Colston Loveland back from being a guy that we truly would love to have in our lineups weekly. At the end of the day, though, I do believe Colston Loveland is still startable, but I just can't rank him inside the top 12 due to the fact that Cole Kmet is seeing as many snaps as he does. He is a high-end tight end 2 for me on the week in the 10th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis. Now, with JJ McCarthy under center, TJ Hawkinson has been so bad. In 4 games, he has scored less than 5 points in 3 of those games with number 9 under center. And in his one remotely close to decent game up against the Lions in Detroit, he was 2 of 3 for 11 yards and a touchdown as the tight end 20. Last week, he had 2 receptions on 2 targets for 8 yards, the tight end 38 up against the Cleveland Browns. While this is the 11th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, you would have to be smoking crack if you want to start Hawkinson based upon his production with JJ McCarthy. Sure, if Carson Wentz was in there, go right ahead. I get the reasoning why you would start TJ Hawkinson, but that's not possible anymore. So TJ Hawkinson shouldn't even be rostered, in my opinion. Now we got the Green Bay Packers at the New York Football Giants. Now, Theo Johnson would have been a locked and loaded low-end tight end 1 for me this week if Jackson Dart was able to play. It was very clear that with Dart, Theo was going to get a bunch of looks in the red zone and would have the upside to have a big game for your tight end slot. Sadly for Theo, Dart will not be able to play this week. Luckily for him, though, it isn't Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson, and instead we get famous Jameis Winston under center. Now, Jameis could just as easily throw 4 picks in this spot and look like a steaming pile of dog shit, but he could also go ahead, pull the rabbit out the hat, and go absolutely nuclear. So while Theo is much more of a dice roll, in my opinion, without Jackson Dart, in the 14th best matchup for tight ends, I am willing to take that chance. And frankly, with the landscape of tight ends being what it is at this point in the season, and while I don't love having to rank him as a low-end tight end 1, that is where he is going to sit because of the fact that I don't trust a lot of the tight ends in fantasy football. Coming off a 7 reception on 8 targets game for 75 yards as the tight end 7 in Chicago last week. Now, Luke Musgrave is knocking on the door, and he is knocking on the door aggressively. FBI, open up, right? To becoming a start. I strongly believe that he will be able to fill the shoes of Tucker Kraft going forward. And while he may not have that same consistency, the upside is very much there. Last week was his first start with the team, going 3 of 3 like a free throw for 23 yards in one of the most boring games of the season up against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think a bounce back is very much on the table, so you can start him up against the Giants in the 20th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis. But ultimately, I would like to see him have one good game first before I feel like I should roll out the red carpet to throw him in my lineup. Now we got the Cincinnati Bengals at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you guys remember, the last time these two teams played, every single notable tight end in this game scored. We had Noah Fant. We had Pat Freiermuth, who scored twice. We had Jonnu Smith and Darnell Washington all find the end zone. Noah Fant was 4 for 4, like he was at Wendy's, for 44 yards and a touchdown as the tight end number 10. Now, the Steelers are the 4th best matchup for tight ends, so I certainly can see him scoring again. But at the end of the day, this guy hasn't seen more than 4 targets a single time with Joe Flacco under center. The smart decision for me would be leaving him on your bench or on your waivers. But again, if you're debating between a guy like Noah Fant and Hunter Henry or Noah Fant and some of the other low-end tight end 2 type of starts that we talk about, if you wanted to play Noah Fant, if you wanted to play Pat Freiermuth, who we're going to talk about in half a second, I fully understand it. But we have a category for this video, for the tight end videos, the running back, the wide receiver, the quarterback videos. In the tight end and quarterback videos, the top 18 guys are starts, the rest are sits. Same thing with the quarterbacks, and the tight ends are the same. At running back, it's a little bit more loose, but at wide receiver, it's the top 40 guys are listed as starts. So while Noah Fant doesn't quite crack that category of being a start, if you have to start him, I get it, right? But I can't just list 25 fucking tight ends as starts, because then people would complain, Nick, you're just talking about every single tight end as a start, right? Obviously. So Pat Freiermuth found the end zone last time out up against the Bengals, 5 of 6 for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. Since then, he hasn't gotten more than 4 targets, though, and hasn't cracked the top 10. Again, I can see all of these guys scoring because Rodgers is a tight end enjoyer, but that touchdown could easily go to Jonnu Smith or Darnell Washington. In the best matchup for tight ends on a per-game basis, if you want to roll the dice with one of them, it would be Pat Freiermuth, but for me, I would prefer to sit all of them. Now we got the Los Angeles Superchargers at the Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval. Now, Brenton Strange is designated to return from the IR for the Jaguars Jaguars earlier on in the week, and he was at practice on Wednesday from the quad and hip injury, meaning that he could return this week. Brenton Strange looked decent this season and had 7 targets in 2 of the full 4 games he has played. So if he can return and get back to that, he may be a lower end start going forward. I'm not talking about how, he's going to be a top 12 guy going forward, but hey, if you're in a real pickle and you have to throw someone out there, maybe he's fine for that. But coming off the injury in the 27th best matchup for tight ends, I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. If he is out, then I'm going to play Johnny Munt. I'm not going to be playing Johnny Munt, obviously, right? We just don't want to be playing tight ends in the 27th best matchup that are on an offense that we don't trust at all. Aaron Gadsden avoided serious injury as he practiced in full on Wednesday. Last week, he got hurt around halfway through the game and wasn't able to really get anything going prior to that. 3 receptions on 6 targets for 13 yards up against the Steelers after 3 straight games as a top 10 tight end prior to last week. So while last week, before he got hurt, definitely was a bit worrisome, right? It wasn't the finest sight that your eyes have ever beholded upon, but this is the 2nd best matchup for tight ends, so I feel very, 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 very confident in a bounce back here. I got him as a high-end tight end number 1. Now we move to the 4 p.m. slate of games with the Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. A.J. Barner was not involved at all last week up against the Cardinals after dealing with a calf injury from the week prior. Now, Sam Darnold only threw the ball 12 times because the Seahawks defense scored 2 touchdowns and they cruised to victory. So I would expect to see more Barner going forward. But for me, the issue here really lies with the amount of targets that he will see. Typically, he is a guy that sees 3-ish targets. And when you only see 3 targets, you have to score in order for him to actually pay off being in your lineup. So while this is the 12th best matchup for tight ends, I find it difficult at the end of the day to actually trust him. If you want to play him, then go ahead. I personally just would not do it. The Los Angeles Rams are the classic case of a team that utilizes way too many tight ends to actually trust a single one. If I had to go up there to bat Shohei Ohtani style for one of these guys, it would be Tyler Higbee. But ultimately, when you use Tyler Higbee, Davis Allen, and Kobe Parkinson on 50+% of the snaps, with Terrence Ferguson getting 30+% of the snaps, it makes it too difficult of a scenario to decipher weekly. Again, if you had to play one of them, it would be Higbee, but for me, I'd prefer to leave them all on the waivers. Now we got the 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. Now George Kittle, to a shock of absolutely nobody, is a must-start tight end number 1. Last week, he put the Rams defense in a spin cycle, even if the 49ers got waxed like a car in the Karate Kid by Daniel. 9 receptions on 9 targets for 84 yards and a touchdown. Kittle has been an extremely boom or bust player this season. In the 18th best matchup for tight ends, though, you are certainly rocking with George Kittle me Timbers as a high-end tight end number 1. Just like George Kittle, you already knew that you were starting Trey McBride. If you're listening to this part of the video, you probably just wanted to hear me glaze your tight end. Pause. And I will. 9 receptions on 13 targets for 127 yards and a touchdown with Jacoby Brissett. He has been a top 6 tight end in all games and has 5 total touchdowns over that stretch with at least 1 touchdown in each game. They don't have Marvin Harrison Jr. as he needed to get surgery on his appendix. So in the 16th best matchup for tight ends, I expect Trey McBride to hit him with the Street Fighter combo as my tight end number 1 in all of fantasy football this week. Very nice. Now we move to the Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. Now Mark Andrews this season is touchdown or bust. Back-to-back weeks with at least 1 touchdown and 3 total touchdowns over that stretch. In both games, he failed to eclipse 25 receiving yards with Lamar Jackson. Last week at Minnesota, he's the tight end 9. So he played well, but it's because of the touchdown, not because of all the yards going his way. The Browns are the 21st best matchup for tight ends on a per-game basis, so I wouldn't expect greatness here, but with how red hot, how scorching hot Mark Andrews has been over the last 2 weeks with Lamar Jackson back under center, he is a high-end tight end 2 for me this week. Now, I fully understand that trusting the Browns offense will make your stomach turn, but for Harold Fannin, it is worth it. 7+ targets in back-to-back games, and it is very clear that Dylan Gabriel loves feeding the tight ends. 4 receptions on 7 targets for 77 yards last week as the Jets tight end 17. The Ravens allow the 23rd most points to tight ends on a per game basis, so Fannin is a low-end tight end 2 start for me on the week. David Njoku is clearly lower down the totem pole of this offense compared to Harold Fannin, as his targets aren't as bountiful, but he has scored now in back-to-back games, so if you need to roll the dice on a tight end, he's fine in that tight end 16 to 18 range. Now we got the Kansas City Chiefs at the Denver Broncos. Now, Travis Kelce has been reliable this season. Sure, he doesn't look like the same version of himself from a couple of years ago, but even with Rashee Rice back in the fold, the guy continues to get his fair share of targets. Back-to-back top 8 finishes before the bye week. We did just see the Broncos defense lock up Brock Bowers in a certified snooze fest that was Thursday Night Football, but I do believe the Chiefs will be able to actually move the ball. So while this is the 25th best matchup for tight ends on a per game basis, due to Kelce having such a high safety rating this season, he has to be ranked in a high fashion as a mid-range tight end number 1. Now, Evan Ingram just isn't involved enough for you to ever actually trust him. Even when he was having decent showings, the upside really just never flashed. And while I do believe that Bo Nix is a talented quarterback, there are a ton of cooks in the metaphorical quote-unquote kitchen here in Denver. And ultimately, that means Evan Ingram is relatively left out of the scenario, right? With fewer than 10 points now in 5 straight games, and one game in that stretch with 0 points, in the 26th best matchup for tight ends on a per-game basis, he would be a clear sit for me. Now we got the Detroit Lions going up against the Philadelphia Eagles on "'Cause You Waited All Day for Sunday Night." Laporta missed practice on Wednesday with a back injury, more than likely a precautionary move rather than something that will lead to missed time, but it is something to follow. Laporta has been pretty boom or bust this year with 4 of 9 games inside the top 5 and 4 games outside the top 20. Last week was a rare middling showing from Laporta, who had 5 receptions on 5 targets for 53 yards in a clobbering of the Commanders' defense in Washington as the tight end number 10, facing the Eagles, who are the 3rd worst matchup for tight ends on a per game basis. Definitely has me a little bit nervous, while at the same time, though, I do understand that maybe he'll be a bust. You aren't sitting him, right? Based on the high numbers he's put up this season, you cannot sit him even in a tough spot like this, right? Because I understand that matchups matter in fantasy football. We love breaking down matchups, but at the end of the day, getting too cute and sending a guy like Sam Laporta could be the reason why you fucking lose your week. Now, Dallas Goedert has been incredibly consistent this season, which is something that is very shocking to me still at this point in the season, based on the amount of weapons that they have in this offense. Goedert has been a top 10 tight end in half of his 8 games this season. Last week, he was the tight end 18 in Green Bay with 4 receptions on 6 targets for 43 yards. Had that game not have been a complete and utter boring affair, maybe he would have done better, but ifs and buts were candies and nuts, then it would always be Christmas. I'm pretty sure that is the saying. In the 19th best matchup for tight ends, I expect a solid showing here for a guy that has scored at least 1 touchdown in 5 of 8 games this season. He is a mid-range tight end 1 for me this week. Now we move to the final matchup of the week, Monday Night Football, the Dallas Cowboys at the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football. Now, Brock Bowers had me wishing I could go into one of those time machines that was in those old Doritos Super Bowl commercials. I don't know why they stopped making those. Honestly, those were pretty fire. And stop myself from actually starting him last week. After having 12 receptions on 13 targets for 127 yards and 3 touchdowns and 1 rush for 6 yards up against the Jaguars in week number 9, he was the tight end 31 in Mile High on Thursday Night Football with 1 reception on 3 targets for 31 yards in a far from ideal matchup. This week against a Cowboys defense that allows the 15th most points to tight ends on a per game basis, I feel great about Bowers. I'm not going to let last week kind of taint my opinion on him. He is a top 3 tight end for me on the week. Jake Ferguson has stumbled a lot over the last 2 games prior to the bye. Now, it hasn't been a complete and utter fall where he would end up on like America's Funniest Home Videos or something, but it hasn't been great either. Week 8 was that true fall. Just 1 target for 0 catches. Week 9 up against the Cardinals, he got his footing back with 5 receptions on 7 targets for 50 yards. This season, he has had 6 of 9 games inside of the top 12 with 5 of 9 games inside the top 5. The matchup here is worrisome as the Raiders allow the 28th most points to tight ends on a per game basis. But with my expectation being that the Cowboys offense takes some smelling salts and actually wakes up coming out the bye week, Ferguson is a must start for Galicious. Top 6 tight end options. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below, like it owes you some money. Leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get out of here. Good boy.